Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Today is the day that we talk about books and writing. My name is Blaise Van Heck.
I'm Leslie Gamanis.
Yay. So, Busybird Publishing, we help people to write and publish their books. And every week we want to talk about a couple of books that we've been working on. These are not really recent, but still very relevant.
So they're recent.
So, The Power of Interactive Care. This book is by Julianne Verhagen, and that's a great picture of her and her brother. So her brother is obviously in a wheelchair, and she works with people with disabilities, and her book is all about, better ways of working with that. I'm going to read a bit of the blurb. Are you frustrated with the standard of care that people with disability often endure? Are you concerned about the way your family member is being supported and you want to make their lives better? In The Power of Interactive Care, Julianne outlines 8 themes which define what interactive care is and the training available to become certified in it. She also gets real about the life of support workers and how to balance our demands with their needs. So Les, why do you think a book like this is important?
A book like this would connect with other people in similar situations, whether they're carers or people who have conditions, and it would help teach them about different ways of caring and just their compassion.
I think it's very relevant too, because we now have the NDIS, which is meant to be helping people with disabilities, but I think there's mixed reports as to whether it is or people are having trouble accessing it. And I think, I don't know the statistics, but there are a lot of people living with disabilities or need care.
How many people? What are the statistics?
I don't know what they are.
Okay.
And so a book like this, and this is, I think, a great reason to write a book, is to highlight an issue in our community and help people, make better informed choices about what they need to do. So that's The Power of Interactive Care. That came out last year, I think. Can you remember? Yes, 2018.
It came out last year.
Yeah, and there goes my phone. So that's a non-fiction book, and then we have a novella by Nandita Chakraborty, or Noni as we call her, Mirror Rising. Now this won an award last year, I think. Now this is a really nice example of what you can get printed with print on demand. See, it has a slip cover or dust cover.
Yep.
Has the name of the book in the spine, on the spine, I should say. I'll read a little bit about what this book's about.
Okay.
When Meera Sen comes to the city of Melbourne to become a microbiologist, all she has with her are the traditional values of her culture and the idol of Lord Krishna given to her by her uncle. When Meera meets Brian for the first time, she hates him, but Brian falls in love with her instantly. Even as he desires her, Brian, consumed with his own insecurities, risks driving her away instead. Living in Australia and then returning to her homeland to reconnect with her family and the obligations waiting for her will leave Meera no stranger to heartbreak. And when it seems this world has failed her, will Meera find fulfillment elsewhere? Inspired by the life of Mirabai, our Meera has been bestowed with not one but 2 lovers who fight to win her love. Our mortal Brian seeks to rescue Meera and take her back to the temporal world, whilst the immortal Krishna invites Meera to his permanent world. Mirror Rising is the unforgettable story of an ordinary woman who dares to become an immortal saint, the extraordinary modern Mirabai. So this is fiction, obviously, but it's very much about cross-culture relationships, a little bit about, Indian culture. And did you know, Les, that in Melbourne we have quite a large immigration of Indians
What would the statistics be?
I don't know what the statistics
okay.
are. But when this book came out, which is now maybe 2 years old, I lose track of time. But when it came out, when we had the launch here, it was huge.
2 years.
And the Indian community really got on board with it. And I know that Noni has a huge following from India. She's obviously from India, but living here in Australia. So this is a really good cross-culture book of fiction. What would you say about the importance of a book like this?
A book like this can introduce you to different cultures, to the way we need to have empathy,
Yep.
and even stuff like aspiration towards something greater than what we can see, touch, hear,
Yep.
feel, and all that.
Yep. Awesome. So this week we are going to talk about editing. I think we have talked about editing before. I'll hold that so you don't fidget.
I don't fidget. You fidget. Take that.
We have talked about editing before. Okay, enough. How about we look at a bit of the self-editing that you could do before you work with an editor?
Okay.
Obviously, we always say you can't edit your own book, but there are
Well, you need to.
there are a lot of things that you can do before it goes to editing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, too many people think once they finish the first draft, that's it. Their work's done.
Yeah.
And they just need an editor now. And, you know, I mean, self-editing is just called revision.
Yeah.
So before you send it out to anyone to read, and especially before you send it out to an editor, you need to look at it yourself and go over it and over it and get as much out of it as you can.
Yeah.
So that when you do send it to people, they're not telling you things about issues you already knew existed. There's no point to that. That's just redundant.
Yeah.
So stuff.
Even just simply proofreading it.
Oh, well, I would be
is a good
reading it
idea.
repeatedly over and over and over just to try and correct stuff like spelling, grammar, punctuation, clarity, and just to see if it's a fiction book, if the plot is cohesive, if the characters are dimensional, and if it's a non-fiction book, whether the arguments sound substantial, and then whichever sort of book it is, whether the chronology works, whether the structure is accomplishing what it's trying to do.
Yeah. So just say, okay, I've finished the first draft of my novella. What would you suggest is the next step?
I'd probably just quit my job because it would be a bestseller.
We wish.
If I just finished whatever I finished, whether it was a novella or whatever, I would then go back and reread it straight away.
So you don't leave it at all
No.
at this stage, okay?
No, because once you finish it, that's when you'll be very familiar with the story or the content, and you will think about things that you could have put in and things that don't work. So, and when I say you go back and reread it, I don't mean reread it once, I mean reread it like 3-4 times.
Yeah.
Just to,
Because you're going to make notes
Yeah.
or changes at each time, aren't you?
yeah, and that'll help you flesh it out. And I always believe as you're rereading, the content should get more layered, but the word count should actually shrink. Because
Yeah, so you get more succinct as well,
yeah,
don't you?
so you know, people think the more you hit readers over the head with a certain point, whether it's a description or a point in a self-help book type, that sort of thing, it's going to work better. It doesn't. It works the other way. You need to be direct
Yeah.
and communicate with the reader in a way that the reader's not going to feel bored or distracted.
Yeah. So sometimes people tell us, I'm so over this, I don't want to look at it anymore. What would you say to that?
I think, well, it depends on the person. I don't know how many times they've looked over it. They might have looked over it enough that they aren't going to get anything more out of it. I mean, for me, you get to a certain point where you really do get sick of it, and I would then just lay it aside for a few months and not look at it, not think about it. If you have any...
But what if they want to, they have a launch in mind, and they don't have a few months?
Well, okay. If you have a launch, you might want to go directly to editing, but I would
At least a
seriously...
week or something.
Yeah,
You need a bit of space, don't you?
It depends on the book, and what its function is. It might be time sensitive, but I know it happens frequently. I wouldn't be writing a book with the launch already booked in. I wouldn't be writing a book now in May and saying it needs to be out September, because to me that's like just too quick a turnaround, and you're not going to be able to do the book justice, because everyone's rushed, the editors are rushed, you yourself are rushed. So what's going to happen is you're probably going to miss things, and you're going to get to that last week where you think, I need to send this out, but I'm not quite happy with it, and it's like, well,
for the sake of a few more weeks,
especially. You just be, and it's great to have a deadline to say I do want this done by this certain date, but it shouldn't be a deadline that means everyone is working at such a pace that they're not going to be able to do the book justice. So I wouldn't be booking things like within 3 to 4 months. I think people who are rushed
out. And it depends on the book too. If it's a novel that's 80,000 words, that's a lot of words to keep going over and over. Yep. Whereas if it's something like a pocketbook that might only be 15,000, 20,000 words, it's obviously it's not as time consuming to keep going over it.
No, but it's really about, not in relation to this book, but just books in general. That's done. Can't change it.
Yeah.
Can't go liquid paper every thing I want to change.
Do people know what liquid paper is?
White out, whatever you want to call it.
Does it still exist?
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
People still write by hand. That's done. I can't change anything in this book. It's now complete. So this is, if you didn't like something in it, it's too late now.
Yeah.
So.
Or if you do want to change it, it's costly and time consuming.
Well, you'd have to do another print run. You'd have to go back and make changes to the actual layout, which we talked about a few weeks ago, which is going to be costly. And I just get the feeling that, like, if I give you a manuscript and I ask you to read it, I think when it's in the manuscript form, you're open to revision, to suggestions, to stuff like that. When I give you a book like this, the conceit is, well, it's finished because it's now printed and it's complete. So I just think before you get anywhere near this stage, you should do as much work as you can on the manuscript stage.
Yeah. So once you have done as much as you can to the manuscript, what would you do then? You'd leave it for a bit before you show anyone?
I'd leave it for a bit, then go back and do the same thing, just to make sure, okay, there's nothing more. Usually when you walk away from a project, that's when you start getting ideas about what you could have done.
Yeah.
That's because you take the pressure off your mind to produce, your imagination to produce.
Yeah.
And then...
also, even doing something like printing it out, like leaving it for a little bit and then printing it out, you kind of see it in a totally... And so many people tell us when they actually get the printed book, they suddenly see all of these things that they wanted to change.
Yep. And
we do tell them that during the process, but they don't quite understand it or don't believe us.
No. Well, I mean, again, it's about how serious are you about writing. Even if you aren't a career writer or career author, even if you just want like one book as part of your business or part of your branding, it's then going to go out into the world and represent you. So it should still be the very best book it can be. It shouldn't be a rushed book. So, I'd put it aside and I'd pick it up, I'd go over it again, then I'd give it to the readers. So everyone should have like a handful of readers they can go to who are going to give them constructive feedback.
Yeah, and we were talking about this last week about how, people start showing the book when it's in layout stage and it's just the wrong time. You need to be doing it before you go to editing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's like one of our pet peeves of people putting up covers on Facebook and saying, what's your opinion? And then they get 100 different opinions. And it's not the right forum to be getting feedback. You should have a handful of people who you trust.
Yeah.
And who can be honest with you. So partners, family, dogs, stuff like that. People who are close to you aren't going to give you honest feedback.
And even people who maybe are in your industry or, who have actually some professional opinion rather than just personal opinion.
Well,
because, not everyone's going to read a book about disability, the disability, world, if you like.
Well, Julian has a puff here from Christos Iliopoulos, who is the winner of the 2013 Australian Human Rights Commission Business Award. So, she's obviously given it out to people in her field. And, one of them's been kind enough to give her an extremely positive puff. That's called a puff, a little bit about the book.
Like a testimonial.
Yep. And those sort of people are, the people that you're writing to. So they're people who can give you extremely constructive feedback about what you might be missing and where you can work on your content.
Yep. what else what other little tricks are there in terms of seeing your
Well, as
product
you said,
differently?
print it out.
Yep.
So you look at a different format. I'm sure everyone's had the experience where they've written a letter and they've read it 28 times on screen and it seemed fine, and they print it out, and when they're going over it, they see an error.
Or you send an email and straight away you see that there was something wrong, or think of something wrong. And on the screen you miss about 25% of errors.
Yeah, so if you have two computers or more, read it on another computer that you don't associate writing with, because your mind, when you're writing on a certain computer, you're just thinking, okay, I've seen this content this way before, I know what it's meant to say, so you're not actually being as analytical as you would as when you move it to a different setting, and it just forces your mind to say, hey, I haven't seen it this way, I'm going to look at it like I'm seeing it fresh.
Yep.
Similarly, change the colour of the font,
Yep.
change the font. Again, it just forces your mind to process the information in a medium that it hasn't seen before.
Yeah.
So just little things like that can actually make a world of difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, all those things have in common is, again, you're going over it and over it and
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah. And even when a book is ready for print, the layout's all done, we suggest proofreading it, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Because one time is just to check for things, and then, the designer will make changes, so you should be proofing it again.
Well, the other thing too
Not
is,
just skimming over it.
I can't remember the word length for this.
About 25,000, I think.
So even at 25,000 words, if I'd written this and I was rereading it, I'm not going to remember every single word I wrote. So a lot of times when I do revision on my own work, I'll, like, for example, read a chapter, and just a single chapter, and that's to familiarise myself with what's in the chapter. Then I'll read it again, now knowing where everything is going, the way I phrase things, what words I've used, and just with that familiarity now I can have great objectivity as to what might need work. And I know, like, I might have written the book, but 25,000 words in this case, I'm not going to remember every single word I wrote. So sometimes you might read a chapter and feel, I should put this in, I should put that in, that's not explained very well. But that might be explained just a little bit later, which you don't remember because, again, your familiarity with the content has...
And sometimes you think things are there that aren't.
Yep.
Because you've been, talking to yourself in your head about it while you're writing, and sometimes you think you put it there and it's not actually there.
Yeah. So stuff like that really helps in terms of getting the most out of your own revision, which, as I said, I think too many people feel once they've written the book, that's it, it's done. They don't have to do anything more. Like, everything they said for the first time was perfect.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. That's probably enough tips for people in terms of revising.
Yep.
Next week we might talk about how to launch a book, because a lot of people
I launched it.
break our products.
It's hardcover.
Luckily, books aren't breakable. A lot of people, some people kind of skip the launch, the idea of a book launch.
Yep.
Or they feel like it's too vain, or, a waste of time or money or something. So we're going to talk about why that's not true.
Okay.
Now we have an event. Well, we have open mic night tonight at 7 p.m. if you're in the vicinity. Although we have people coming from Geelong and Sunbury and Dandenong quite often. What else is happening? We have a publish for profit or publishing options session here on the 15th of June. So for anyone who has been thinking about publishing a book, this is actually a really good session to tell you how the process works and sort of some of the things to look out for.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And we're really excited about our Bali retreat in November, and we have all the new dates up on our website.
Cool.
So thanks everyone for tuning in this Wednesday, Hump Day, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.